So I now want to introduce someone who's very special to this organization. You know, I started at the top of the plenary today talking about 20 years ago, the decision that was made by a bunch of folks who were doing work in the field, that they felt that they needed to change how Washington thought about investing in people, and they wanted to create an organization to make it possible for folks like yourselves to have those conversations here in Washington. Well, the next person I'm about to introduce was one of those early leaders in this field. So everybody knows Las Vegas. Everybody knows that it's an important state, not just for folks who live in Nevada, but it's an important state in national elections. Everybody's heard of the Culinary Workers Union, which is an essential part that keeps the city of Vegas running for working people and for all of us who go there on vacation and what have you. But in the workforce development world, what you really know Las Vegas about is about the Culinary Workers Training Academy, one of the most important and largest labor management partnerships in this country, which has trained thousands of folks over the years for good paying jobs in the hospitality sector. And one of the early leaders in the creation of that academy was Las Vegas native Stephen Horsford. And 20 years ago, when I got to know Stephen, he was one of the folks that it was clear that he needed to be somebody who was having conversations with folks in Washington to help them understand what they don't understand about what it takes to move somebody into a good job and to do that at an industry-wide or sector level. But Stephen took it further than that. He became a leader in the Nevada State Legislature, and he is now the congressional representative of Nevada's 4th District. He also, in between those two things, he also became a member of the National Skills Coalition Board of Directors, for which I was very thankful. And he has continued to carry this torch on behalf of our issues in every context where he's doing work. So I had mentioned he's a member of the House Ways and Means Committee, and he has been working on a piece of legislation that is about to be introduced soon. It was mentioned during the plenary here, the Skill Up Act, which is going to finally change the work opportunity tax credit to reward companies that actually invest in their people, invest in their training and work-based learning. We talked a bit about infrastructure. Congressman Horsford is leading the charge to make sure that we have a clear workforce development component in the infrastructure package that is going to be considered by the House so that we are fully diversifying the range of people who have access to one of those skilled jobs that we hope to be creating through the infrastructure investment. He's also a key leader in the Congressional Black Caucus. He chairs its Census Task Force to make sure that everyone is counted in this next census. And the CBC is about to start an important 2-day meeting here in Washington, but thankfully, Congressman Horsford was willing to run here to come talk to us before he runs out to the CBC meeting. So let's please give a big national skills welcome and thanks to Congressman Stephen Horsford.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Andy, for that overly generous introduction. 20 years ago, I didn't have as much gray hair, and I never planned to serve in public office, so let that be an example for all of you out in that audience here today. The next congressional leader or president could be in this audience because we actually need people who come from the field to lead in this work. So thank you very much, Andy, for letting me be here today. I've had, as Andy said, the opportunity to work with him for more than 20 years, and he is truly a fearless leader, someone who gets things done and brings people together. The work that the National Skills Coalition has done over the years is really remarkable, and to see more than 500 people here today for this annual convening is an example of the great work that Andy and the entire National Skills Coalition does each and every day. So let's give a shout out to them once again. When I started at Nevada Partners in the Culinary Academy, I wasn't even 30 years old at the time. And so this organization helped really equip me with the leadership that I needed to be able to go back and help my organization grow. And I am so honored that A delegation from Nevada is here, led by Dr. Mark Scott, the CEO of the Culinary Academy of Las Vegas. And I know Anna and Bill and the team are here as well. It's great to have them in our nation's capital. Mark is doing tremendous work in carrying on the legacy by training thousands of workers in southern Nevada to work in what we call Las Vegas the entertainment capital. Well, we're becoming the entertainment and sports capital of the world. We're about to open a new stadium for the Raiders later this year. I don't know quite how I feel about the Raiders yet, but they better come with a winning attitude. So I'm deeply appreciative of his work and the work of the entire Culinary Academy. But today I'm here to speak to you now as a member of Congress, and it's truly an honor for me to be able to say that. You know, I grew up in Las Vegas, raised by a single mom. Lost my father to gun violence when I was a freshman in college. But for someone giving me a chance to believe in my talent and equipping me with the skills, I would not be who I am today or doing what I'm doing as a member of Congress, which is to fight for legislation that not only provides our workforce with the training it needs, but make sure that we are creating good paying jobs for the workforce that we need. We have to keep asking ourselves this fundamental question: what kind of jobs are we creating, and do they pay enough to live on? For 53 million American workers, 44% of the entire workforce of our country, they earn barely enough to live on. Of those 53 million workers who are barely earning enough to survive, their median annual income is $18,000 a year. The takeaway: millions of hardworking Americans are working full-time, year-round, and struggling to eke out a living in order to support themselves and their family members on very low wages. And once we have those well-paying jobs created in our economy, we have to provide the workforce with the tools that it needs to fill those positions with competent, highly skilled workers. Last year, I worked across the aisle to introduce the Jobs Act, a bipartisan bill that would make the federal Pell Grant more accessible to people in my home state of Nevada and across the country enrolling in short-term training programs that currently aren't eligible to receive Pell Grant funding. Over the past few years, Nevada has been one of the nation's fastest growing economies, with new jobs being added to the job market every single month. However, many of these jobs are going unfilled, while our workforce lacks the necessary skills. So I introduced the Jobs Act to help bridge the gap and open those opportunities up to a wider swath of capable Nevadans. And next week, as Andy said, I'm introducing the Skill Up Act, which will assist businesses in growing the number of skilled workers and train our workforce for our 21st century opportunities. 62% of small and mid-sized business leaders say that it's difficult to find skilled workers. Currently, there is no federal policy designed to adequately support businesses with filling these middle skill job openings, and no policies or programs that empower workers ready to take their career to the next level. Currently, the Work Opportunity Tax Credit helps businesses hire workers with barriers to employment. That includes veterans, disadvantaged youth, and low-income workers. But it does little to offset the cost to employer-provided training, and that is something we can all get behind. But the Work Opportunity Tax Credit does little to offset this employer-provided training, as I said. So as a result, many employers that offer well-paying but higher skilled jobs are unable to take full advantage of the program by training workers with low skills to be their future workforce. Millions of jobs remain open because workers do not have an opportunity to develop the necessary skills to succeed. That's why I'm acting now to provide targeted tax incentives to businesses that invest in work-based learning for workers most in need of training opportunities. We already know that on-the-job training and credential attainment are successful at improving wages and retaining employees. We've seen the success of the temporary assistance for needy families, recipients, and other workers who are able to take part in job training or skill building programs. So the Skill Up program, the Skill Up Act, will help make job training programs more accessible to employers by offering an additional tax credit for employers that hire work opportunity tax credit eligible employees and invest in those employees with job or skill training programs that leads to higher wages and advancement within their company. So I hope that with this piece of legislation, we can help businesses and employees have the support that they need to grow our well-skilled, good-paying job market and in turn, grow our economy. And I'm gonna need all of your help in promoting the Skill Up Act over the course of the next few days while you're here. Please encourage your members of Congress to sign up and be a co-sponsor of this legislation as it's introduced. The more bipartisan, broad-based support we can have, the more likely it'll get through the process. Growing the job market will also come with an infrastructure package that was introduced last week in the House of Representatives. To be clear, any conversation about infrastructure must include human capital and innovative workforce development initiatives to promote a diverse and inclusive labor pool. But all of this means nothing if we do not incorporate racial justice and equity in our workforce training programs. That's why the Congressional Black Caucus recently released our 21st Century Infrastructure Principles to help guide the conversation for Congress and how to build a stronger, more effective nation that works for every American, not just a select few. Out of the 7 principles, I can't go into all of them in depth, but I wanted to quickly highlight a couple that I believe that are particularly important. 1, we must redefine what infrastructure is. Traditionally, the term infrastructure has been largely understood to include our transportation infrastructure, telecommunications, and public buildings. We must now include human capital into that definition of infrastructure. Because for far too long, we have talked about what and how to build infrastructure without investing in the skills and education of the very people we trust to build our roads, our schools, and our hospitals. That leads me to the second principle I want to highlight, which is promoting gender and racial inclusion in infrastructure building. Often, the economic benefit generated by infrastructure construction does not accrue to the poorest communities, and the infrastructure workforce traditionally lacks gender and racial diversity. We cannot build the future infrastructure workforce if we are not purposeful about extending such opportunities that those that have been traditionally left out, including African Americans, Latinx community, youth between the ages of 18 to 25, including homeless, foster, and runaway youth. As I stated earlier, any infrastructure package must include innovative job training and workforce development initiatives to promote a racially diverse and inclusive labor pool, which particularly emphasizes, with particular emphasis, on developing the skilled technical workforce. By ensuring all individuals are able to gain the skills they need to perform this work, and then ensuring they are hired for jobs taking advantage of the skills gained, we can provide equal opportunity for each and every American to contribute in meaningful ways to both the economy and to the communities we all call home. So let me be clear. Training someone for a job that ends when the project ends is not what I'm talking about or advocating for. I'm fighting to create a training system that prepares workers for the industry, the sector, that gives them tangible skills and credentials that positions them for higher and more critical advancement in the future. A skilled technical workforce that reflects the diversity of our nation is critical to our continued growth and advancement. Investing in education and skills development initiatives for the American people, including youth, is essential to building an economy and an infrastructure that works for everyone. That is why I am so excited to be working with the National Skills Coalition to develop an infrastructure workforce plan that will focus on training for good-paying, middle-skilled jobs, closing the racial equity gaps within the workforce training, and making sure we develop our youth to be ready for this job market, because 1/3 to 1/2 of workers in transportation, water, and electrical utilities are over the age of 55. So we must be ready to replace them with a next generation of workers with the skills that they need to compete. So in closing, I am so looking forward to continuing the fight for our workforce and creating opportunities for the American people. And I want to especially thank all of you for coming to this National Skills Coalition convening from all over the country. Each one of you brings an expertise, a background, and an education that we, as members of Congress at this critical time, desperately need. There's a lot of conversation happening in Washington, especially over the last couple of weeks, last few months. But nothing is more important to the American people than being lifted up with a good-paying job. But it starts with the education and the skills that they need to pursue those opportunities. You know that, you get that, and it's important that you convey those messages to members of Congress so that we stay focused on what the American people really want us to deliver on. Thank you very much for allowing me to be here to join all of you. Have a great convening, and please come by and visit us at the Capitol if you have time. Take care.